Welcome to the Modern Application Development 2 screencast. In this screencast, we'll see how to do advanced state management using Vuex. For this, you will need a browser. I'm using Firefox, and you will need a editor. I'm using Sublime Text here. One of the often overlooked part of a Vue application is data, right? You have in your application here the data, right? So all your reactivity depends on that. It is the source of truth for the whole Vue application, and it's a raw object, like a raw data object, right? And as the application grows, you will have many components. Like in this app, we have few components in this app. In a real application, we'll have many components, and the state is scattered across because even the components can have their own states, and the application can have its own state, so they are scattered across, and managing them becomes difficult because then you'll have to see what change where reflects where, and what on the screen changed what because of what, etc., etc., and then debugging becomes difficult. Hence we kind of tend to use what we call a store pattern, where we take out these data attribute or data from the components and stuff, and make it at the application level and reuse it. For example, if you go to the view page, you can see it here. Instead of using like a data or separate data between two, you can declare one at the top and reuse them, right? One of the top and then reuse them. In general, it would look like like there's a store, and then use that store in each of your application or components. And basically you declare the store as an object instead of just one attribute, and then it can have its own functions that can change this. So you have one central place where you can change the values, or clear the values, update the values, etc., so that you can use the functions instead of directly changing the values. This is very basic and simple. To do anything better, Vue offers us something called Vuex. If you go to Vuex page, you can read about what it means. But in small or in short, Vuex offers a way to manage the state across the Vue application in a centralized way. It also integrates into Vue DevTools. I'll show it to you how it integrates into Vue DevTools. So what you can do is, with that integration, you can do time travel debugging, which means you can go back to the previous state, or you can go forward to the previous state, so that it helps you in debugging. So that's, since we are going back in time of the state, it's called time travel debugging. I'll show an example as we go down. Now let's start with using it in our case. I've opened the same application that we had done last time, with some routers and some data, and this is how it looks. And you can go to about, privacy, etc., and then you have a home, and then you do give a name and say hi. It does certain things, and then it shows you the message here, and a name of the component or the title of the component we are showing here. One of the things that we missed or we did not show is this grand total that we had before. It's still we still have it as part of the application. If you go to the application, we still have it at the application, but we are not showing it as part of the application.html. So let's just put it there, right? We had it here, or we can just put it somewhere here. Let's put here total. So we can just refresh this. We have total messages 0. Now let's assume this, we had many components, and that would they are all trying to access this total messages, and we are also we also trying to emit this add to grand total, which we had it in as a v on here. Now we don't have it because we can't, like, I don't want to have it here. I want it to manage as part of the state, because ultimately we are changing the state. Instead of emitting here, I really want to change the state of the application this directly, instead of calling this and then doing that state change, right? So what I'll do is I will probably move this data to a centralized store using view store, and then I'll try to handle this. Instead of emitting the event and handling it, I'll directly use the view store or Vuex rather to do that change, and we'll see how to do that. Yeah. So first of all, let's remove this from here and move to a separate store called Vuex view store. Now before we do that, we have to include another file. We have to install the Vuex, right? And that's a straightforward install. Since we are using JavaScript, you can install it directly by adding the and script importing the JS file, right? Let's go back and add here our Vuex, right, after the view router. This is where this is the file that is required to do this, right? I'm adding it here. Now I'm going to declare a Vuex store. Now you can declare it at the top, but I'm just going to, let's declare it at the top, right? And that can be done by doing this, right? And here. So we are declaring a constant called store, which is a Vuex store, and that has a state, and the grand total is 0. Now we have to use this store in our Vue app, right? So that can be done by, first of all I'll remove this, right? We don't need it because we're going to use a centralized data now. Store : store, right? So that will get used now instead of the data, right? Just like how we included router before, I'm including the store now. Okay, so we have done one step now, and okay, we're using this, right? Now if I refresh the page, it's not going to show, because now actually this grand total, or the data that we are trying to access here, is not part of the Vue app. It's part of the store. So we should be able to return that. That can be done in many ways. I'll go with the easier one, which we have learned using the computed, right? Computed method. We can call it the same grand total, so that it kind of matches. Okay, now we have to return from the store, right? Like not from the this dot grand total, because it's not there in this. It has to come from the store. So you can just since we have access, global access, we can just call this. I'm going to remove this because this won't okay, I'll show it later. Okay, anyway, you have computed here. You can do grand total and then function, and then use that computed call here, right? Now at least it should show 0, right? It should show 0. Now if I add let's do inspect and then say Tej hi, say hi. Now if you go to the view, we can just click once more. So you can see that it has raised an event, but we are not handling this event basically. So nothing is getting done because we are not handling that event to update this attribute. We're just raising the event. That's it. Not handling the event. So basically this is useless. Instead of that, we can do something that is done by actually changing this value here. Instead of raising the event, we can actually change that value. We'll see how to do that with respect to a store, which we used to do here like before. So since we are not going to use this now, I'm going to remove this just to reduce the confusion, right? And we will have to do something here, right? To change the value. We can do store dot grand total plus plus, let's assume. Actually it will be store dot state dot, I think. Yeah, right. Let's check what happens. I'm going to comment this. Okay, I'm going to clear the console. I'm going to view, say hi, this stage, right? This is changing, but ideally we shouldn't be doing it, because then again we'll lead into the same problem as to who is changing what, right? Then it becomes much more difficult. Also, because we have access to store object directly, sometimes you may not have access to store object directly. Here we have, right? But sometimes you may not have access to that. Anyway, we shouldn't be doing this, right? Instead, we should be calling something called mutation. Vuex offers like another type of functions called mutations, which are generally used to change the values in the store, right? So like by the meaning, by definition, a mutation is the one which makes a change, mutates, right? Updates or increments, decrements and stuff like that. So you can add a mutation here to change it, right? You can say mutations. I'm just going to copy paste. See, increment the grand total. Now mutations will have will get state as the input, and then we update the state, right? Or increment the state. Now you can do something called all mutations needs to be committed to make the change to this, right? So instead of doing this, we'll actually do commit. That can be done by state.commit by doing this, right? Here we are getting access to the store by $store, like how we used to get access to data, and then we are doing a commit, not changing it directly. We are doing a commit. Now this has two advantages. I'll show it to you. Right, let's go by here and go to Vuex, and it says base state. Now let's say stage hi, right? Now we go on back, you can see here there is a commit, right? Increment grand total was committed. Now we can revert this, right? Now it goes back to 0. Now you can see that the messages is not reverting. That's because our messages are still part of the component, right? We are still keeping it as part of the component. We can move this also here to have a global set of messages, right? If you want to maintain it like that. But this also shows that even if you have a global Vuex, your components can still have its own data, its own specific private data, and you can see, you can store the application level data in a common place. That way you can separate out some of it, like, you know, to manage the data where it belongs, rather. Right, you can do a step of, you know, moving these to actually the global store and using them. I'm not going to do that, but you can do that. Right, now we saw that, you know, you can update or, you know, mutate using commit. You actually commit the mutation by sending the name of the mutation, and you can also pass some values if that mutation or that function takes values, instead of changing it directly. And that helps you to do this history or time travel, like we spoke before. You can do this time travel using because we are doing commits, right? Now let's go back and see what other things you know, your Vuex offers. Just like mutations, it also offers getters. Now getters are there are two ways you can access the data inside you know, store. We already saw one way, which is direct attribute access, right? Like store dot, you know, state dot grand total. You can also do this dot dollar store. We can also do that, but there is a better way to access it using using getters, right? Now getters are the functions that will, you know, return the value. You can also do some modifications, yeah, or you can do plain simple return. Let's do like a simple one first, and then I'll see like a better usage of getter. Okay, like just like mutations, you have to define getters as function, and then here, okay, here. And then in this you can for simple purpose you can just return you know, if it's a simple thing, you can just do state dot grand total, right? You don't need to do anything else. It's actually a return. Okay, now let me just check if it's all closed. Yeah, okay, now you can use this getter instead of directly using the attribute name, right? Let's go down and use that instead of the attribute way of accessing it. Can do this, right? Now here I'm going from the store, I'm getting getters and doing get grand total. Now if I, when I refresh, you can also just do this dot dollar store if you want to access from inside the component, right? Now we were accessing from outside. Also our store object is directly accessible. Okay, let's go back here and refresh this. Okay, we have refreshed it. Then if I do this dot hello world as message, then you get this. You know, it's going through the getters, going to get grand total and doing it. Let's say you want to do some formatting, you want to show it in like in some way. Let's say you want to format it as a two digit number all the time, or 3-digit number all the time. I mean, it makes sense sometimes if you're doing, you know, a decimal 0.00, you want to show 2 decimal points, or you want to show a rupee symbol and things like that. But here I'm just going to make it like a formatted into 2 digits. So I'm just going to use to grand local string and like have 2 digits as the minimum grouping, right? Just making sure it's all closed. Okay, now if you go here, you can see it's become 002 minimum digits, right? Then if I do Tej hello, then it becomes 01. Now if it was like a rupee or something, you could have done, you know, RS or actually rupee symbol and done some things like that, right? So you can use it for like doing formatting and many other things. You can have as many getters as you want. You could have different getters for different formatting and stuff. So so we saw two types. One is mutations and one is getters. Now there's another type called actions, right? When you want to perform certain actions on the state in the store. You can see them here. Now there is one major difference between actions and mutations. The difference is everything inside the mutation has to be synchronous. It can't be asynchronous. You can't make it like a promise and wait and then commit or then change the value, because if you do that, then we won't be able to use this history management in the thing. And it's a state that you want to be sure that when it's committed, it means it's changed. So whatever you write inside the mutation has to be synchronous, but whatever you write inside the action doesn't have to be synchronous. You can do some ajax calls, and as part of that, at the end of it, you can call a mutation and commit. So that's where actions are useful, right? So you can see and read about that in the page. Basically, that's the difference. We could probably write an action called similar to this increment grand total. Let's say you wanted to also do some background update, right? Let's say increment send first and then INCR. Okay, I'm going to take only state here. I think you can get state and context rather. Right, now you could do here, for example, first do a fetch or an ajax call. On success, you can call commit, right? Failure, you do something else. Here also you have to actually call a mutation. You shouldn't be directly changing the state. You should actually call the mutation and commit the mutation, right? And then do. And you can use this send first and then increment. While when we are calling in mutation, we call it committing, right? Committing the mutation. Similarly, for actions, we call it dispatch. We dispatch an action, we commit a mutation. So you can, from somewhere, you could probably, like, we could move this here. For example, this is simple case. I could do this, and then you could do some asynchronous stuff, whatever you want to do. That's how you do. And then you could or rather you could do context.commit, because you're getting a context, not store. Okay, and then instead of calling this as a thing, we could call this by dispatching. Instead of we were doing here commit, we can do dispatch, right? You can do this dot $store dot dispatch to dispatch an action, and the action can do many things and then actually commit the grand total. Now, for example, you could have done all of this asynchronous things if required within this action and then do the commit at the end of it. Like if you didn't want to do it here, you could have just done everything as part of the store. But ideally I would this is like a data, right? Like, so what I want to keep in this is the state, the functions that changes the state, the functions that get the state. Then those are the functions that can actually do something and then commit the state or do something with that state, right? That's what those are the things. The functions are the things that are very close to the data. I would keep it here, and which are at the high level, probably at the application level. I try not to keep anything that is very specific to a component. That you can still use the component level data to keep it. This will be at applications level, so the application can use or any of the components can use. It's like a shared data, right? So that is the end of it. You can go ahead and check the website, and they have some more examples. We have covered most of it. We have covered state, getters, mutations, and actions. You know all of it now to use. Now, are you forced to use all the time? Maybe not, but any decent sized application will have a complex data or complex state, and in that case it's always good to use Vuex store to manage it, which is centralized and gives you a centralized place where you can write all those functions that change the data. And also it gives you a very good debugging tool in the form of Vuex time travel, which will allow you to commit, which will allow you to revert and do many things, right? That will really help you if your application is very complex and if you have lots of data and playing around with changing the states. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching.